Well, I don't know about you, but February sneaks up on me. I think winter is like November, December. Every year I tell myself, don't get too caught into the trap of thinking that the coldest months are November and December, because they're not. January and February come round and wallop me in the face every year, and I forget how cold and dark they are. But the good news is it's nearly the middle of February now, and that means the lighter days are coming. We've actually been given a bit more warmer weather than what we might have had previously in February over the last few days, although it has been horrendously windy, and yesterday was a terrible rainstorm. Today it's dry. It's really heavy misty. I got up this morning, had a look out and couldn't see any of the animals in the fields or anything like that, but it's lifting ever so much, and I have a feeling that we might even see some blue skies today. So what better day than to have a look around the plot, see what's going on. I've got loads to update you on, so if you only come here for the plot tours, let's crack on and I'll show you what's changed. So around about 6.2 degrees centigrade, 99% humidity today. No surprise on the humidity. There's a few things that have caught my eye. I haven't been around and had a look without you guys just yet, but there's a few things I'm excited about that's caught my eye. Ignore the dinner plate. That was chicken food. Right, let's get started over here. So as you may or may not know, we are lucky enough to have a greenhouse here. It was here when we moved in, and that means that I can overwinter a few winter hardy plants and get a couple of things started off a little bit sooner. We also have cold frames outside, which I'm going to use differently this year compared to previous years. So in the greenhouse now, I've got a propagator, which is bought from a shop at Propagator, and also if we turn around slowly here, a homemade propagator, which we did a video on if anybody's interested in seeing how that happened. We're going to go into the back of the greenhouse, not tripping over the wires, and start off in here. Now we always get watched in the greenhouse by the chickens outside, and if you're one of our vlog viewers, you'll see that the greenhouse still hasn't been washed at the back, but that is on the list of things to do in February, along with a lot of other February jobs. Now look at these mushrooms. Of course I'm interested in the kale and the onions that I've actually sown, but as you might have already seen, there's mushrooms galore growing in here, so I need to try and identify those, see if they're edible, because I always worry where mushrooms are concerned. Now these kale here, the three along the edge here, are doing absolutely perfectly, growing fantastically. Could probably even start harvesting some of the lower leaves off this Portuguese kale, excuse the cockerels. And the onions are not doing too bad. I thought they might have been a little bit stronger than what they are. And the blueberries at the back, we've got different varieties. Can't remember what they are, but some are earlier and some are later, so I'm guessing this is a little bit later, but it's budding. This one's in leaf, so that one's probably an early one, and this one is potentially an even later one because that's also budding as well. These were in the ground until recently because we've had a shift around in the plot outside. Now on this side, this is the side of the greenhouse bed that got attacked by the chickens. So the chickens got in here, thankfully stayed on this side of the greenhouse beds, and can you see the delves in the floor? Made the home, hence all of the compost on the back there. They had a good scratch around, and that's another job that's on the list to tidy up, but not a priority. So on the list of things to do, obviously, is that, as I've just mentioned, but also to get the rest of the greenhouse washed. I did the front bit of the greenhouse recently. I've not had a chance to do the back bit there, but soon enough we're really going to benefit from getting that done. Just to get that extra light in for the seedlings that are going to be hanging around. Now again, if you're here with the weekly vlogs, you'll have seen this before, but let's have a little update and show you what's going on in the homemade propagator. Now last year we grew lots of onions, but we just didn't have enough, hence the amount that I've got going on here. There will be more than this. I'll show you as we go around the plot. We've already got onion sets that were sown in or planted in August in the ground. These are the overwintering tomatoes that are looking okay actually. I thought this front one might be a goner, but if you can see there's a little shoot that's just come in, so I might be able to take the dead leaves off and keep that going. What I also intend to do, these new side shoots that normally you would prick out or snip off as the plant gets going during the year, I'm going to try and replant those on as well, so that'd be a good way to keep them going. I've also got the sweet peas that are looking really well. One of my jobs is to get rid of that tray of plants because there's only one garlic coming through. Now these are my spare garlic, so this is going into the polytunnel today, which we'll have a look into next. So these are just my spares that I popped in just in case we need them, and we do. And there's loads of chickweed coming as well. We've also got perennial kale cuttings, so these are coming on lovely, and they're going to be going into the ground hopefully anytime soon. They haven't been in here all the time in this heated area, so they should be fine just to go into the greenhouse for a few days and straight outside. They're really tough plants. I don't think that they'll need any warmth whatsoever. And this tarragon, I've successfully overwintered this tarragon as well, which is fantastic. Now with that tarragon, I really want to look after that. It'll only be going out in the really nicest months of this year, back inside over the winter, but what I do want to do is acclimatise it as best I can. I did have one that I acclimatised previously, and unfortunately we've lost that, so obviously didn't acclimatise it that well. Anyway, in the propagator that we've got here are all of the peppers that I pricked on just last week. Now I'm not going to open this up because I don't want it to lose any heat. It's quite chilly at the moment, but you can see they are doing really, really well, so I'm pleased with those. As they get bigger, I'll just add another layer onto this propagator, which is just sat on the corner there, and hopefully they'll come on really, really well. In previous months, I've had the peppers in the house, but unfortunately, just because they take up so much space, and I'm lucky enough to have this propagator out here, I'm going to see if I can manage them all outside, including the tomatoes this year. I did take them in the house to germinate, and then as soon as they started to get pricked out, they came outside. So far, so good. We haven't had any below freezing temperatures. We have had freezing temperatures, so it's 0 degrees here, but we haven't had any below freezing, and the heat of the propagator is doing just enough to keep them alive. So I could do with thriving though, not just being alive. We'll see how that goes this year. Now over here we've got the sweet peas, the eating peas and the broad beans. I've got a recent sowing of broad beans, so these are the Super Aquadulce, and these went in on the 20th of January, and they are just starting to peek through, just in time for this plot too, which is fantastic. I'm showing you these first because at the back here I've got more that I actually sowed. When did I sow these guys? The 7th of October. And I think that I've made a mistake by not getting them into the ground just yet. So I'm going to get them in today. I've got so many jobs to do this afternoon. Look out for the next video if you're interested in that. But these are going to go into the ground and we'll see how they do. Because obviously there's some browning of these leaves, but I'm not sure why, because the top of the plants are looking really healthy, really good, and they're starting to flower. So I'm not sure, do I need to nip those flowers off? Anyway, we'll talk about that on the weekly vlogs. Another perennial kale. These are the sweet peas that I pinched out at the advice of you lovely guys in the comments, and they are looking really, really well. Now the garden peas, not so much. I think I'm just going to use these for shoots and get some more sown today, and there's some more sweet peas there. Right, let's go and look in the polytunnel. Just next to the polytunnel, apart from weeds and leaves, in this bed here, does anybody know what that is? I'll tell you at the end of the video if I remember, but it's coming up nice and early for us here in the northeast of England, so I'm really pleased with that. That's going to be one of the first harvests. This was pineapple sage, just needs clearing down. That's my chives that just needs clearing down. And what was in here is my feverfew, but unfortunately we've lost that last year. It didn't come up at all, so I'll be taking this out and then replanting something there, or I may just let this spread here. So if you guys know what that is, bit of a teaser, let me know in the comments. Now, clearly this kale has decided enough's enough, and I think we'll be composting this one. It's fed us well over the winter, and then this bed is just ready for whatever's going to go in it when we start planting, which I'll talk about actually shortly because I've got a plan there. This was that parsley that I mentioned to you. It's not thriving as well because it is more exposed than that one over there by the fence. Just outside the polytunnel, these are purely ornamental. These are daffodils. Absolutely lovely. First sign of spring between those and the snowdrops. I always love seeing those. And this is overwintered parsley, so before I chop this down, I'm going to try and use the new growth for the first flush of parsley of the year before it goes to seed. So this was sown and grown last year, but that will go to seed this year. I've got some more which I'll show you, which isn't as protected. Anyway, inside the polytunnel, this is all garlic in these two beds here, and there are some onions as well at the back, which I'll show you in a minute. Interestingly, this German giant hasn't taken at all, except the odd one or two further down here. Super slow growing in comparison to all of the others. That might be, it might be a little bit drier here compared to the other parts of the bed. Can you see here where it gets dripped on? Anyway, those garlic that you have seen in the greenhouse are for plugging the gaps in here. So obviously this row finishes here simply because they weren't sown anymore. These were the spares in the polytunnel, so I shall get some of those sown in there. And then at the bottom here are a few onions which are not doing as well as I would hope, but anyway, we'll leave them in. I'm also going to just clear away all of this mossy stuff off the top, and I'm hoping to get these top dressed with something like leaves or anything organic matter that I can find. But they're looking good. I'm pleased with how they're looking. There's lots more outside which we'll take a look at out there. Now, I talked briefly about the cold frames, that I was going to do something differently with them this year. I don't know if you remember, but in here I've got onions from last year that didn't make it into the ground. Yes, they really are still there. I was in two minds whether to plant them or not, and I know I spoke to you guys in the comments about it below. I'm going to put them in the ones in the greenhouse that have been taken out by the chickens, because if they don't work in there, it doesn't matter. I don't want to use my bed space for them, because obviously I'm going to need to use that for other things. So yes, they really are still there. But what I was going to say about the cold frames, they got battered in the latest round of storms. I don't know if I only noticed it more because I'm gardening more these days over the last 8 years or so, or if it's always been the case, but we seem to be having more storms than ever. So what was on these cold frames was plastic sheeting that you can see has completely ripped off, and in some instances is still in the cold frame. So I need to get the top of these repaired. There's two of them, but I'm not going to use them to harden off my plants anymore, which I've done previously, because I found that the plants simply didn't need hardening off. Just being in the greenhouse, not in the heated areas, been enough for them. And then I've just put things straight into the ground. If needed, I've just popped a little fleece over them and things have done really well. So I'm going to do that in future and not waste this space on hardening things off. So I'm trying to speak in between the cockerels, but it's not always working. So what's going to go in this space here are going to be peppers, so more of the bush, smaller pepper varieties, and they like to grow together with the friends. It's going to feel like a warm greenhouse environment. I think those two cold frames will be absolutely perfect for those smaller pepper plants. If they do get too big in the height of the summer, we'll just open them up and just give them, well, they'll need some air anyway, because it really will get too hot in there, even for peppers. Anyway, that's the plan. So we're going to get these repaired over the next couple of months, because obviously there's an expense involved there, isn't there always? And we're going to see if we can find it, maybe something on Facebook Marketplace, or if we're going to have to go and buy something, we shall see. Now this is the other tarragon plant that I've got, not the one that I said had died, obviously, because this one is still alive. And this was a bit of an experiment to leave it outside next to the greenhouse windows to see if it has survived the frost. This has been out in sort of -7, -8 this year. And I don't know how, but it seems to be coming back. This is a weed, so we can take that out and compost that today. I'm really, really pleased that seems to be working. Tarragon is one of my favourite herbs. If you've never tried it, it's got it's a beautiful, mild flavour. I love it. So moving quickly on, this bed here has got the last of the carrots in it. You guys have seen me take all of these out over the last few weeks. I think what I'm going to do is for this bed here with the carrots, the swede, the leeks and the parsnips, I'm going to harvest all of these, not next week, but the week after, which is half term here. I think we're going to be having a chicken dinner sooner rather than later. Let's shut him up. I think I'm going to harvest everything on that half term week, so I'm planning on taking a day off just to do things like that, and to do some work in the house around cooking and getting some meals in the freezers and things. And then this will free these beds up so I can put a top layer of compost on them, if indeed we have any, because we've used all of our compost from our muck heaps, which I'll show you why in just a second. But yeah, then at least these will be empty and pretty much ready for the year ahead's planting. Just next to the polytunnel, the bed next to the polytunnel at the end here, this is an old feed trough that was here on the farm when we moved in. It's got common thyme and sage in. That sage doesn't really produce very well. I think it might just be a little bit too much asking two plants feeding from what's in there. So I may just take some cuttings off that and remove that and let the thyme try and grow better, or I may just take them both out and put something else in there this year. Next to those, we've just got a couple of lavender. This is a perennial kale that isn't doing very well because it's been contained in a small bucket. So I think we're going to put this in with the chickens this year and put a bit of a mesh around it so that they can just take the bits that are leaning up against the mesh, but not kill the plant off. That's the theory. So we'll see what happens with that. This rosemary here is doing really well. This is not, I don't know the variety, but it's not the usual rosemary that I'm used to. Survived all of the winter. It hasn't had rosemary beetle on it, which I found out about, I think it was for the first time last year. So that's doing really well. So I could take some cuttings off that as well. The other thing in this carrot bed are these, I think this is winter density lettuce. They may come on as the weather warms up ever so slightly, and that's another thing that I'm going to be sowing very soon. After I've done this plot tour with you guys, I'm going to be getting a load of seed sown this afternoon, and also the other February jobs that we'll talk about as I'm wandering around and show you what needs to be getting done. It's early morning now. That's the plan for the rest of today and tomorrow, because there are tons of things that still need doing. When people say they don't garden in February, I just don't know how, or in the winter. There's so much that needs to be done, from at least for my garden. I don't know about everybody else's, and it's nothing to do with the way that we're working or anything like that. It just seems that there's always jobs to do. Now I'm going to start off on this angle. So up there is the shed where we always start off and look at the temperature and see how things are doing. And we're going to come into the veg plot on this bed here. This is lavender that's doing really well, clearly. So I'm not a lavender grower, as you can tell. I'm thinking we need to take all these down and then let it grow and thrive again this year. Now, if anyone's got any tips on the bay tree, so this is the bay tree that came on so fantastically next year, and then it's now obviously been hit by the frosts. Do I need to trim it down? We've talked about this before and I can't remember what we did, so I'll have to go back to those comments and have a look. This bed here has got all nasturtiums, borage, chamomile, which is still there. Can you see that'll thrive this year again? This is oregano, obviously the rosemary that we talked about. Now I'm a little bit concerned because that's starting to die off on the tips there. I did suffer from rosemary beetle last year, and it was in February that we noticed it, which feels a little bit early, but I'm looking and I can't see one. However, I'll show you another rosemary plant that it's absolutely decimated. So this bed just needs another scattering of compost. I've put some spare on, which, as I say, I'm in short supply at the minute. And then here is apple mint that's trying to come through. If you were around last year, you will have seen it take over this bed. Staying on top of that this year, definitely. There's a little lavender plant in the corner there. Now, nemesis bed. So here we've got a perennial kale that did really, really well, but it's time for it to go. That's coming out. That's one of the February jobs. And at the back, we'll come to the rhubarb in a moment, my nemesis raspberries. I wish I had never, ever planted the blooming things. They are getting dug out. All again, this is all plans for February, because once we get into March, it's going to be too busy to do all of the other things, and all of these will have started to take root again. I mean, raspberries just never give up root anyway. Even if I think they've dug them out, guaranteed these are going to try and come back this year. But what I'm trying to do is empty this bed completely, because I want to use this for more growing space this year. So what am I going to do about the rhubarb? Look at it. It's not supposed to be growing yet. So my plan for this rhubarb, you can see this bloody raspberry cane is coming up through the middle of it. This rhubarb here struggles every year. This one is the boss. It takes over, it thrives, it's amazing. This one just dies and gives up. Well, it hasn't died, obviously, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to dig this one out and I'm going to plant it over on what looks like a junkyard over there. I'll show you that as we get over, just because it's not doing anything for us, and I feel so sorry for it every year. Now I want to take this one out as well, but looking at it, I'm thinking that's far too far on to dig it out. I was going to dig it out and split it because I've got 3 beds. So I was going to do 1, 2, 3, split that one, keep that one as it is. I'm not sure, we'll see. But again, that's on today's job, so I'm going to have to make a decision pretty quickly. That'll then pretty much empty that bed, depending on what happens with that rhubarb. And then I'm going to be getting that brassicas in this bed this year, because the soil in here is really compact. The brassicas are going to love that, so I think that that's a done deal. This is the rosemary that I'm thinking the beetle killed. Now that's interesting. These white marks weren't on it last time. Anyway, so it's a goner basically. So I'll probably burn that. I'll put it in the rubbish bin. I don't really want to put it on the compost. There's only a tiny little bit here that's survived. So that's coming out. So that bed will then pretty much be empty. Now here's a crop I'm so pleased with this year. The plants look tatty, but oh my goodness me, the sprouts are huge. And of course I don't know what variety they are. So I can't remember if these were bought as plug plants because my seedlings failed. But anyway, this is another one of those crops that the week after next, so we won't have eaten all of these by then. We are eating them regularly. Any that are left will be harvested and popped into the freezer, and then that'll clear the bottom of this bed. These are just bloody weeds here, so they'll be coming out, starting already. But what I was excited about this morning, yes, I was excited about it. Look, these two plants here were dug out and they were treated pretty roughly, not through anybody's fault, just by how it worked out. Again, you'll see where they've come from in a moment, but they are alive and thriving by the look of it. So yes, absolutely thrilled with those. These are both honeyberry trees. Now this year, if they do fruit, which at least they're going to survive, but we'll see if the fruit, hopefully they will, I'm going to protect them from the birds, because there is a million things here that the birds can have, but of course they want the juicy honeyberries. We have had about 5 of these in all of the years that they've been fruiting. They get to them so quickly, and I don't blame them, because the honeyberries are really, really nice. So I'm going to protect them with nets or something. I need to check about pollination. I think you need 2, that's why I've got the 2 anyway to pollinate. We'll figure something out, but hopefully we'll have a nice harvest of these this year, because fruit is another thing really trying to increase on here on the small holding, so that we have to go to the supermarket less for fruit basically. Look what I've just found, Brussels sprout brilliant F1. So it's a shame that it's an F1, but I'm not surprised, because they are really actually brilliant, so they're living up to their name. So I'll remember that for this year, and if I see any of those seeds then I might pick them up, because I'm hoping for an early harvest of sprouts this year. So we shall see how that works out. Now next to that bed we have got a little bit more of a nemesis bed, because I grew more nettles in this bed than what's supposed to be in it, which is strawberries. So I need to get in here and I need to get all of the dead leaves taken out, give them a nice tidy up, and a decent mulch, I think, all being well. Again, I'm questioning myself what I'm going to use for mulch, because I've still got no compost. I did have enough compost for this bed though, which is the asparagus bed. So there's a few repairs need doing to this bed here. You can see where the beds come apart. Stephen will get to that at some point, but that's the asparagus bed. That's one of our earliest crops. We'll get that sometime in May, and then that'll be asparagus for a good few weeks. So I need to make sure that that was done. So that's all taken care of. Another bed that needs a little bit of attention from a repair point of view, which is exactly what we use in February for. It's all about planning, maintenance, repairs and a bit of patience, is this bed here, which has got onion sets in it. So we've got some red winter onion sets, and I've got some electric onion sets in here. That cane was just to show me, to remind me where I'd planted to, so I didn't double plant. They seem to have come up really well. Now red onions don't store very well for me historically, so when these are ready they'll be getting eaten fresh, and I won't be trying to get these stored, but I'm really pleased with how that's done. Now the back of this bed I had a couple of squash in last year, the baked potato squash, which I highly recommend if anybody's looking for something to grow. But there is a lovage in here as well, so I'm either going to use it or lose it with the lovage this year, because it takes over and completely drowns out lots of other things. And this year, if it's not getting used, it doesn't get to stay. So thinking what I'm going to do at the back of this bed here, where that weed is, I might put one of those perennial kale plants, maybe 1 or 2, probably 1. I think I'm pushing my luck if I put 2 in, we'll see, from the greenhouse. So I think that's where they're going to go, and then nicely out of the way, and they can just romp away without interfering with anything else. Now to the junkyard, another junkyard. So obviously these are all the hoops that we use on the beds and things, and it's unsightly but it's necessary. These beds also are in need of maintenance and repair, which is on the list, as I keep saying, one thing at a time. And we have got more onions in this bed, and in the middle we have got garlic, which is just looking absolutely amazing. Like, I'm so proud of this bed, it's unbelievable. It's neat, it's tidy, it's thriving. Oh my goodness, I'm really, really chuffed to bits with this bed. Oh look, baby, what the hell snapped that? How is that? I bet you that's a cat, you know. Oh my goodness, look. Okay, is it a cat? Maybe it was a storm. Still vying for the cats. We don't have cats here. Actually, Amanda asked me, I haven't responded to those comments yet. That's on today's list for when I sit down with a cup of tea later. We don't have cats here on the small holding because our neighbours between them have got 6, or they had 6, it might be 5 now. They're not very good at catching things though. Well, certainly not here on the small holding. So that's why we still have a bit of a rodent problem where the animals feed are. Hear about that on some of the small holding videos, but from a gardening perspective, the cats are an absolute nuisance because they think that they own these beds as their own personal litter trays. So this year, everything, and I mean everything, is getting covered. I prefer to see what I'm growing though, but it's not just the cats, it's the other pests that we've got as well. You know, anything that wants to eat our food. You know, we're happy to share, but it needs to be fair. And some things don't play fair. Now this bed here is onions as well. So we've got garlic in the middle and onions on either side. Now I seem to have, I've spread these out a bit further than the other bed, so I might leave those to be the last maturing ones. We shall see. Hopefully they won't bolt. All of the onions that are in here and in that bed over at the far side were from sets, so none of them were from seed. You've seen all of the seeds in the greenhouse. Now this monster of a hedge here is coming out, so this is another decision that Stephen and I have made. So as you can see, it is desperate for a haircut, and as we move into the drier months, this will sap all of the moisture out of the ground in combination with that hedge at the back there, which is yew. So we have decided we're going to take this out. We're not keen on box hedging. It's offering nothing to us in terms of from a gardening point of view. Of course, the birds might nest in there, hedgehogs might use that, but believe me, there's plenty of other things around here that can provide the nesting and the hibernation that might be needed for those animals. So this one here is also coming out. Now looky here, this bed, the compost bin is empty. This was full until a few weeks ago, and again you're thinking, well, where's she using all this compost? I shall show you in just a moment. We've got Jerusalem artichokes down here, which I've tried to kill off multiple times and failed, so I need to get those dug out because they'll be starting to grow again very soon. But this bed here, I'm thinking this year is also going to be squash. We'll talk about planning of what's going where in a different video because I'm really excited at what's coming this year. This bed has notoriously been a bit of a pain though, which is why I'm growing squash in it, because the squash tends to vine everywhere, covers it and suppresses any of the weeds that'll come through. I haven't got enough compost to put over this bed either this year. We're going to leave those pallets at the back just in case we need to use it as a compost bin in case we fill the other ones. We don't know because it's the first time we'll have used them this year. But the reason, as I say, I'm doing squash is because it can just cover the bed, suppress all of the weeds. And also, why on earth would I want to kill off the Jerusalem artichokes? Well, they take over and have killed off many other plants that have ended up being in this bed just because they take up so much space. They're just complete thugs. As much as we like them, we should have grown them in containers, and that's what we'll do moving forward. But for now, they're not welcome in this bed anymore. So that's why I'm going for the squash, because they'll at least be able to vine around the Jerusalem artichokes as they come up. But if I've got other plants planted where the Jerusalem artichokes are, they just end up pushing them up and out and killing them off, which is just, you know, it's not good enough. And next to that bed is the final bed, which is all fruit. And this also needs care and attention over the next few weeks. I think I'm going to have to take the rest of February off work because I'm not sure when I'm going to get all this done. But these here are gooseberry plants, and as you can see, they thrive, absolutely thrive here. So they need a good trim, and there's also rogue raspberries that are coming through, but these are fine because these are my favourite raspberries. Not cutting these back this year. I did that previously and we didn't get the best of harvest last year. So I'm just, from learning, because I don't know what plants these are, and they literally fruit from early until late. So I think there's a mixture. I'm just going to learn from the experience that I've had from them, leave them alone, and then just every few years take the dead wood out. And that seems to be working best for these raspberries. So gooseberries at the end, raspberries in the middle. And then all of these here are currants, which you can see are already budding, which is just absolutely fantastic. How funny is this? Look, there's a brush there because it was in all the compost that was put on these beds last year. You find all sorts, hoof picks, brushes. Anyway, so that one there is a red currant, the one in the middle is white, and the one at the end is black. Now I'm also going to be taking cuttings, softwood cuttings off these this year because all of these currants will produce really well from the cuttings, and then we can extend our fruit harvest. We've also got rhubarb, you can see, which is a later variety than the one we've just looked at. They're all starting to poke through really well, and one in the corner there. So again, this had a ton of mulch on it. I mean, it was up to my knees last year, so this should thrive really well. But can you see the pink there? That is all nettle roots, so I need to get those taken out. I know some people grow nettles around the world, you know, for the fantastic plants. They're really good for you, but here they grow like well, I was going to say weeds, but it's true, isn't it? They grow in abundance, they take over, they strangle plants. So I need to get those, now that I can see where those roots are, I need to get those dug out, and then hopefully we can stay on top of them. But you know what it's like, it's easy to say, difficult to do, because there's so much work for everybody. Never mind the nettles, let's have a look at what Stephen and I have been working on if you haven't been around for a little while. So get your bearings, that was where the gate was that we first came in. The shed is over to the left, so you walk down the pathway there, come in the gate, and look, this was all trees. We have now replaced it with these beds because this is going to work so much better for us. The trees have been replanted where possible, so we haven't killed any off intentionally anyway. Hopefully they'll all come back. We've got 3 long beds, which are about, I think they were 150 wide, so ideally they wanted to be about 120 wide, but we couldn't fit another one in and we were going to lose a load of space, so we've gone for 150. It just means that you might not be able to reach over to the middle as easily as if it was a skinnier bed. We'll see how it works out this year. I think it's going to be absolutely fine. And here we've got 2 bigger, more rectangular, they might look square, but they are actually rectangular beds. I'm going to be putting squash in these beds this year, just because we've got so many different varieties of squash seeds to get in. I'm really excited about that. I've gone a little bit over the top, but never mind. And this bed in the middle at least is going to have potatoes in it. The reason I say that is because this bed, the compost, so this is where all the compost has gone, in case you didn't realise the answer to that question. And this bed here had the lightest, fluffiest, so if I put my foot on, excuse the socks and trainers, can you see how far down that's going? That is really fluffy, and I think the best crop to put in there with what we've got will be potatoes. These 2 beds either side of it underneath have got more solid stuff in them, so I'm going to grow beans and possibly the outdoor tomatoes, we shall see, in those beds. But no brassicas will be going in these beds this year because they're not solid enough in terms of the compost, whereas brassicas really like firm compost. So squashing these 2, and I think that's what we're going to do in those 3, but more on the planning in a different video. I don't want to overwhelm everybody in this video. And those are the compost bays that I referred to, in case we get those filled up, because they're brand new that Stephen's made. This is all just using things that we've had lying around the Smallholding. So what we had to buy for this area was the timber. It is in all of our previous videos if anyone's interested. But yeah, those compost bays there will overflow into the one we've just looked at in that bed next to that hedge, if we manage to fill all of these as the year goes on. Who knows? I have no idea how that'll pan out. And in the background there, well, first of all, there's a rogue chicken. Honestly, it's a never-ending battle keeping the chickens out. But anyway, we've got lots of different fruit trees. We've got apple, cherry, pear, more apple that we've transplanted from in here, fig, mulberry. I'm really excited to see how that turns out this year. Hopefully we're going to have an abundant harvest from all of them, because we've put a lot of time and effort, a lot of work's gone into doing that. So we'll just have to see how it turns out. Yeah, so as I say, a lot of time and effort, hard graft has gone into doing that, for as cheaply as possible, might I add, as well. So if you're interested in seeing how that goes, feel free to subscribe. You know, even if you just want to come along for the gardening video, you're more than welcome. We do all the Smallholding stuff here, so I try and keep as much of the gardening stuff on the gardening videos as I can, because I know some people do just come for those, but often they get interspersed with the Smallholding things too. So as the year goes on, there'll definitely be more independent gardening videos. So I'll be doing a plot tour like this once a month, where I try to stick to topic of walking around the veg plot and showing you what's in. But then weekly we have more vloggy things of what's actually happening, a bit more chatty, showing you things as we do them. So for example, actually taking that rhubarb out, taking the raspberries out, doing the pruning, taking the cuttings, all of that stuff. So I'll show you doing those rather than just talking about it. But if that's your thing, as I say, feel free to subscribe. Please say hi in the comments, because honestly, it's lovely to get the interaction. The reason that we do this is just sharing the knowledge and the excitement and learning from you guys as much as showing what we're doing. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this February walk around the veg patch and seeing what's going on. Talk to you soon. I didn't forget to tell you, it's wild garlic.